Everyone around you is doing it. Your friend bought the same sneakers every person on Instagram is wearing. Your cousin upgraded to the newest iPhone the day it dropped. Not because his old one broke, but because everyone else did. 3 people in your family switched to the same car after one viral review, and somehow half the people you know are on the same diet, wearing the same style, repeating the same opinions, and you are watching all of this from a slight distance, not because you cannot afford it, but because something inside you looks at what everyone is rushing toward, and instead of feeling pulled in, you feel resistance, a quiet skist. Why? Exactly. Because everyone else is? And the worst part is not the trend. It is the moment someone says, wait, you have not tried it? Why not? Literally everyone is. And instead of feeling convinced, you feel more skeptical than before. You have been here your entire life, and you have never quite had the language for why. The people who feel this most consistent are not contrarians, they are not arrogant, they are not closed-minded. Something very specific is happening inside their brain. Something that has far less to do with stubbornness and far more to do with how a particular kind of mind filters the world. There are 3 cognitive reasons why smart people instinctively resist popular trends. The first explains what your brain does the moment a trend arrives. The second explains why that response is backed by science. But the third, that is the one that will make you stop and think, oh, that is exactly why I do this. Let's start beneath the surface. When a popular trend arrives, most brains do something automatic. They register social proof. Millions are doing this, therefore it is probably correct. Therefore I should too. This is called herd behavior. It saves time, it outsources the decision to the crowd, but certain brains do not outsource decisions. They interrogate them. Who decided this was valuable? What evidence exists? And why does everyone believing it make me trust it less, not more? For this type of thinker, popularity is not proof. It is a variable requiring examination. That is mechanism 1. Psychologists have a name for what drives this. In 1982, Cacioppo and Petty introduced a measurable trait called the need for cognition. It measures how much a person genuinely enjoys analytical thinking. 2 groups received the same popular argument, widely endorsed, backed by social consensus. One group accepted it, the endorsement was enough. The other pulled it apart, identified gaps the crowd missed, and reached independent conclusions. Regardless of how many people had already agreed, the difference was not intelligence, it was the need for cognition score. High need for cognition brains experience thinking as satisfying. They resist pre-packaged conclusions. And when a trend arrives already endorsed by millions, the high cognition brain does not relax. It gets suspicious. That is mechanism 2. Think about the last time something was completely everywhere. A wellness trend, a belief repeated so often it became background noise. You remember the moment someone shared it, as though it was new. The nod you gave, without meaning it. You do not remember being convinced because you were not. Your brain had already located the gap between the claim and the evidence before the sentence even finished. It filed the trend not under useful, but under watch this carefully. You did not decide that, your brain did it without asking you. Now here is where it gets uncomfortable, because it is more personal than most people admit. A significant portion of people who resist trends are not doing it purely from analysis. They are doing it because following the crowd has cost them something before. What happens when this collapses? What happens to people who built their identity around something the crowd eventually abandoned? They have been that person. They believed, genuinely believed, and had to silently unbelieve while the world moved on. So the resistance is not purely analytical. It is protective. That is mechanism 3, and now that you see it, You cannot unsee it. This is documented. Psychological reactance, first described in 1966 by Jack Brem, is where people who feel their freedom of thought is being pressured move in the opposite direction, not because the opposite is better, but because pressure triggers an automatic counter-response. In certain nervous systems, the stronger the social pressure, the stronger the resistance. The crowd pushing harder does not accelerate their adoption, it decelerates it. There is something worth saying about the people on the other side. When someone shares something they genuinely believe in and receives quiet skepticism, it lands like dismissal, like their enthusiasm is not safe with you. Even when completely untrue, that is how it feels. But the resistance was never about them. It is the residue of a mind that learned. The crowd's certainty has a history of being temporary. That does not excuse everything, but it explains most of it. Most people misunderstand trend resistance entirely. They call it ego, stubbornness, inability to stay open. It is none of those things. It is calibration. Where most brains treat social consensus as evidence, this brain treats it as a prompt for deeper examination. The trend was not rejected from arrogance. It was held at a distance until it could prove value independently of the crowd. That is not a closed mind. That is a higher standard of entry. People who resist trends consistently tend to share something else. They are pattern thinkers. Ask them what everyone is talking about. Blank look. Ask them why it works, what its limitations are, what happens after adoption fades. They will not stop talking. Their brain is not tuned to what is popular. It is tuned to what is actually true. And that same mechanism makes them the first person to see what everyone else missed, long before the crowd admits it. None of this means every resistance is correct. Radance can disguise itself as rigor, rejecting anything popular simply because it is popular. One honest question stops that. Is this coming from evidence or from the discomfort of being seen to follow? That separates genuine thinking from automatic reflex. Keeps the rigor, removes the reaction. Because the goal was never to be different, it was always to be accurate. The belief that resisting trends makes you difficult, that part is wrong. You are not a contrarian. You are not someone who cannot adapt. You are someone whose brain learned, through real experience, that the crowd does not always know where it is going, and following without examination has a cost. Most people discover it only after the trend has already gone. Trends arrive loudly, they leave quietly. The thinking that evaluated them honestly before the crowd caught up, that stays. If this gave you language for something you have carried for a long time, research and references are in the description. If you have always felt slightly out of sync with what everyone else is rushing toward, this channel is built exactly for that.